Iraq invades Kuwait.
Okay.
Right now, we don't know what's happened. All we have is that night, there, like, all the streets are packed with cars.
Okay.
People are like sitting, like on the hoods of the cars. The horns are honking. It's a big celebration.
Oh.
It is this massive, like, festive party environment. And there was a couple other guys that were with me that were also around the same age. I think they were a year, 2 years older. We're all like in our late teens or early 20s. And these other two guys were like, "This looks like a good time. You want to go head out?"
Wow. Okay. Right.
So we actually left the hotel. I don't know. It was probably like 11 o'clock at night, just to see what the heck's going on. We had no idea what was happening.
But it was definitely something's different.
Oh yeah, yeah. And we had no idea. So we figured like maybe there was some festival that we didn't know about or something taking place.
Right.
And one of the guys spoke Arabic, so he was able to piece together that the country was celebrating that they had gone to liberate Kuwait, and the Kuwaitis had welcomed them with open arms. So this was a celebration going on, and now that happened. Our tour guide, right, very quickly realized this is not a good situation.
I want to take an opportunity here to welcome you, Hasnain. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Yeah, thank you for joining us today and bringing with you an amazing story about a hostage taking. Talk about turning, lemons into lemonade, but really how you went through a hostage situation, how you worked your way through it, what your thoughts were, and how you look back on it as it's a traumatic experience, but
Absolutely.
How your post-traumatic response to it filters it in such a way that you use it as a growth opportunity.
Okay. All right.
So thank you so much for coming and sharing this. We've talked about so many things.
Yeah.
So many things. But it wasn't until we recently sat down.
Right.
And what kind of triggered the whole thing, what prompted the whole thing was when I was listening to you and say Shirose, like your wife, we were all talking about that event.
Yeah.
You're being taken hostage, which it's a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
Right? So it's not like you lost your car keys.
I don't think it fully sunk in when we were there. It's anyways, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You could have lost even your car, you could freak out about stuff.
Sure.
There's reason to be like,
Yeah.
I lost my car got stolen, you got taken hostage. So as we were sitting there talking, and I was observing how you were talking about being taken hostage,
Right.
and how somebody who cares a lot about you was experiencing the same, like the reality,
Okay.
and was so worried about
Right.
you. But that's what people do, right? People
Sure.
worry about people they care for. There's nothing wrong with that. And it's not like you don't care for yourself. You care for your well-being, and all that.
I think we all
But
do.
I was just watching your two reflections on it.
Okay. Well, she was on the outside. I was there.
Sure.
And that is very different.
Of course. Even if you had flipped it,
Oh no, then I would have been the one freaking out.
Well, so that's interesting, right? So as the person who was there, when you read about, you see interviews with people who've been taken hostage. I've seen them. And they talk about just, everyone has their perspective on it.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a sense of real, like your life is in danger. You are isolated. There's a lot of unknowns.
Yeah.
And I just remember we were just saying it earlier, when you came back from it, we were like teenagers at the time.
Yeah. Correct.
Right? So we're,
I just turned 18. Yeah.
yeah, you're right.
Yep.
And we went right back to pool hall Friday, and let's just carry on.
Yeah.
It was just like I never stopped to say, dude, how was it? We talked a little bit maybe.
Yeah.
But it lasted like, okay, so we're done. You're back. You're okay. It's behind us.
Yeah,
Let's
but I
keep going.
think at that age, these things are just like, you just accept them for something that happened.
Right.
And it's not this, like today you're looking back on it.
Yeah.
And it's a whole, like, whoa.
It's a thing.
Yeah.
right?
But I think at the time, I don't know, I was in the papers, I was in a few magazines.
Yeah.
I don't know, it was weird.
So what's cool about it is, you know, you weren't seeking out to go to a dangerous place.
No.
You know, as far as you knew, where were you heading? What were you doing?
Okay, yeah. So in a nutshell, right? Just I don't know how much time we've got, but what happened was my mom thought this kid needs a little bit of straightening out.
Okay.
Right? He's kind of like he's drifting.
Yeah.
Right.
She wasn't far off.
No.
We're all drifting.
So,
but there's a saying: not all who wander are lost.
Okay.
Do you like that?
I do.
Not all who wander. I read that somewhere.
Yeah. And
Go on.
I would agree with that.
You were wandering. You weren't lost.
So her whole philosophy was, okay, I'm going to take him on a pilgrimage trip.
Okay.
And straighten him out a bit.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And so we went on
It's
this.
either that or the army. Like
yeah. It just shakes some fear into him. Right?
Yeah.
So we were there for 2 weeks. So we were supposed to be there for 2 weeks.
Okay.
First week, everything was fine.
Where was this?
Iraq. Sorry.
So you're going to Iraq.
So we went to Iraq. Yeah.
And it's like a spiritual kind of a journey.
Correct.
And
There's a lot of religious sites there.
Yeah.
A lot of shrines.
Right.
A lot of holy, events that have taken place.
Right. So the purpose is actually like really like this is a development opportunity.
Yeah.
Spiritual development, personal development.
Correct.
You're going to a place for that reason.
Yep.
Like there's a sense of not just is it safe, but it's you're going to come out of this, for the better.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And
so that was definitely her intention and motive for taking me there. Right.
Was there a sense on the way in going, okay, yeah, you're going to a foreign country. It's
the Middle East.
It's the Middle East.
I mean, there's always.
So there's always this thing in the back of your head. It's a different place. Things are done
Correct.
differently.
Exactly.
Right. What is okay here is not okay there.
Yeah.
The other way around. So you already have that sense going in, but you're not going in like, what would you say like your fear level is of going in, or your discomfort level of going in?
No, there was no fear.
Yeah, because you hear people go there all the time.
Yeah, it was. It's a religious pilgrimage that a lot of people go on every year.
Yeah.
And so
they come back like, yeah,
exactly.
Like I'm better and I got better and I'll do this again and I recommend you do it.
It's a couple of weeks. It's not like you're there for months.
Yeah.
At least that's what I
right.
thought.
So that was the plan. You
Right.
just go for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And so before you go, exactly, you're planning only to be away for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And what kind of like in your mind preparation did you make? I know I'm asking a 17-year-old at that time,
Okay.
but what was your thought before going as a 17-year-old that these are the things I'm going away for 2 weeks? Was there something that you were like, I need to put this in order?
No. I'm 17. So I had turned 18 already. So
Okay.
I had turned 18 in June.
Okay.
And the trip was at the end of July.
Okay.
Right. So
It's summertime.
Yeah. So I'm just a month over 18.
Right.
And no, there's no planning.
Just pack.
Yeah, basically. It's
Even
2 weeks.
that.
I'll be back in 2 weeks, and I'll be back in school, and off we go.
Right.
Right. Final year of high school.
Right.
Because we had grade 13 back then.
Right.
And so yeah. So everything
all you
was-
do is you tell a couple of people, if you even tell anyone, I'm going on this trip.
Yeah.
That's it.
It would
It's
just
like
be close. I mean,
I'll see you later.
I don't remember it at all. So it probably was just a few friends, and that's
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Right. I mean, I knew you were heading out and so
Right.
on.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So you
Right.
would have known a couple of the people that were close to me.
Right.
That's it.
You're going on this trip.
Right.
Good luck. See you on the other
See,
side.
yeah. I'll see you in a couple of weeks. We'll
Right.
go hang out before school. Before school starts.
Right.
Right.
Exactly. It was that kind of summer too.
Yeah.
Those are good summers. So okay.
I didn't see the second half of it.
Yeah. That summer was an interesting one. So yeah. So nice. So you make your plan. You're on your way. And you get there.
We get there. Everything's unfolding the way it should. We're seeing sights, and actually, it was fascinating. I mean, there was things that we were learning, and parts of history that you're seeing. That okay, there certain things took place at these locations.
Right.
And it's like, okay, this is kind of cool. And then,
Had you ever been there before?
No.
No. Okay.
No, it's first time.
Okay.
Yeah. And so it's all new, right? I'm a tourist.
And you're
I'm
just sinking. It's just
it's
like a sponge.
It's a good experience.
Yeah.
And then what happens is, I guess, I want to say about 6 or 7 days into the trip,
Okay.
Iraq invades Kuwait.
Okay.
Right now, we don't know what's happened. All we have is that night, all the streets are packed with cars.
Okay.
People are sitting, on the hoods of the cars. The horns are honking. It's a big celebration.
Oh.
It is this massive, festive party environment. And there was a couple other guys that were with me that were also around the same age. I think they were a year, 2 years older.
Sure.
So
same kind of peer group.
Yeah. We're all like in our late teens or early
Yeah.
20s. And these other two guys were like, "This looks like a good time. You want to go head out?"
Wow. Okay. Right.
So we actually left the hotel. I don't know. It was probably like 11 o'clock at night, just to see what the heck's going on. We had no idea what was happening.
But it was definitely something's different.
Oh yeah, yeah, and we had no idea. So we figured like maybe there was some festival that we didn't know about or something taking place.
Right.
And one of the guys spoke Arabic, so he was able to piece together that the country was celebrating that they had gone to liberate Kuwait, and the Kuwaitis had welcomed them with open arms. So this was a celebration going on, and now that happened. Our tour guide, right, very quickly realized this is not a good situation.
Oh, okay.
And so
that's the first sign that something's not.
Yeah, we didn't know that till the next day, though. So
Okay.
we went out.
You're
We kind of just walked through the streets a bit,
taking it in.
Yeah, and it was at that age, everything's an adventure. It was exciting.
You're curious.
Yeah.
You're exploring.
So it was, although there was a little bit of a sense of just danger.
What?
A little bit. I don't know what it was, but there just was, because you didn't know what the heck was going on. So we came back to the hotel and we thought, okay, we better just stay here now.
Oh, really?
Go back out, yeah. And then the next morning, the tour guide said, okay, we're cutting the tour short. We got to get out of here. And so he then made arrangements to try and, because they had immediately shut down the airport. And our flight wasn't for like another 4 or 5 days, but he's like, no, we're gonna get out now. And within those next 4 or 5 days, we made, I think, 2 attempts to drive to the Jordan border, like in a big bus.
Yeah.
Well, one attempt anyways, and got turned around.
Yeah.
Couldn't go to the airport. So all of a sudden, reality started to set in that, okay, wait a second, we might be here for a little while this international conflict's going on.
So you're part of a group already.
Yeah.
And so you have this level of comfort that you're together.
Yeah.
Even when you said you're moving around with a few people, maybe you knew them or you made friends with them.
I met them
when
there.
you got there. So you get along, you go out.
Right.
At night you realize it's time to go home. It's getting a little late. Something starts telling you, call it your gut, that go home.
We all felt uneasy. We couldn't tell you what it was, but we just were like, this is not a good thing.
Really?
Yeah.
And then the next day, your tour guide is telling you that we're going to make an attempt to leave.
Correct.
And that they tell you at that time that the airport is closed already, or you don't know this yet.
No, we don't know exactly what's going on.
Sure.
There's no
but
internet.
as far as the airport being closed, I'm curious that because you said you drove.
Right.
Right. So
we
your
knew- we knew
original
we
plan to
couldn't
fly out
Yeah.
had altered because you can't fly out of this airport anymore.
Right.
Okay.
And that's the only international airport they have. The Baghdad International Airport. That's it.
Okay.
At that time. This was back in 1990.
Yeah. That's right. So you're so now you're having to make these adjustments. That you weren't alone though on this trip. You'd
No.
gone with your mom.
Right.
What were your first thoughts then as you start hearing we need to get out of here?
Again, I mean, you're like, okay, we'll drive to the border and we'll be good. So, and I think as a group, all of us were fairly optimistic
Okay.
that this is, it's just a change in plans.
Okay.
We're just going to adjust. We're not going to fly. We're going to drive to Jordan, go through Amman.
Okay.
And then, buy new tickets and fly out of there.
So does anyone ask why? Like
Yes.
why the change of plans? Why is an airport being shut down?
Oh, this is, yeah.
Do you remember hearing?
No, I don't.
No, like.
And
I mean, today it'd be all over Instagram and people would know.
Correct. You would know what
Back
was
then,
happening.
you don't know.
No.
You're piecing it together, right? But someone might ask, like, why is the airport closed? Or was it just kind of accepted that, look, we're in a country where it's like, call it not the first world sometimes?
Okay, so here's the thing.
Yeah.
I learned this a little bit later in the experience, but there was an evening news broadcast that came on every night.
Okay.
I don't know what time it was, but let's say 6 o'clock.
Right.
There was about an hour of news. Right? And the TV station only turned on for like 3 hours or 4 hours.
Right.
And one of those hours was news.
Okay.
And so we did hear the well, I'm going to call it propaganda
Okay.
of what was going on, right?
Right.
And exactly what the citizens were saying on the street is what the news was saying, that Iraq has, basically invaded, but they didn't use the word invade,
Right.
but they have liberated
Yeah.
the Kuwaiti people.
Right.
And the Kuwaiti people are really happy about it, and they're celebrating. And so, I mean,
But does it add up? I mean,
No,
I
it
know
didn't.
you're young at that time,
Yeah.
but maybe that's what gives it away. Like, you guys are celebrating, but the airport is closed.
Yeah, at 18, I don't know if I was,
Yeah.
like picking up on what was happening,
Hmm.
but the adults were,
Yeah.
right?
So you sensed others
No, I think the tour guide was,
looked a little stressed.
he was very stressed.
That's the tour guides usually, though. Usually stressed
He
about
was
stuff
totally
anyway.
stressed. But he was also trying to shelter the group. I think he didn't want us panicking and freaking
Sure.
out. Right?
That's
So
the
his
job.
whole thing was, I got to get these guys out of here. And he really was not sharing a lot of details with us.
Okay.
So it was like, okay, look, the plans have changed. I've made these arrangements. I got a bus.
Right.
This is what we're doing. And the rest of us were like, okay, that's, it's a change in plans. It's,
So the most important person there with you is your mom at the time.
Yeah.
And your guys are obviously communicating about, okay, we got to pack. But in the two of you talking, you didn't sense that she's worried about anything. This is just part of the plan. And
Yeah, no.
we're just, because plans do change on these kind of trips.
Well,
it happens.
so I don't remember much of, like, the questions you're asking me. It's funny. I'm thinking back. I don't have a lot of details, but what I do remember, and this really is, so the bus ride is like a 6 or 7 hour bus ride to the border, right?
Yes.
Everyone's in good spirits. We're all chatting. It's all good.
Okay.
We got turned around at the border, right? So we drive, whatever that was, 6 hours, let's say, get to the border, and they're like, no, border's closed, turn around, go back.
And that doesn't happen in 1 minute. You're sitting at the border, you're
Yes,
waiting, you're
right.
trying to get across. It's not the first try. They try again. There's persuasion. You see
Correct.
the tour guide coming. Is that like,
Yeah, and-
it didn't just happen in an instant where they're like, yeah, turn the bus around?
No,
or
and
was it like that?
No, you're right, because even on the way there were checkpoints.
Yes.
And every checkpoint, like a few soldiers would get on the bus
Huh.
with machine guns, right?
Sure.
Kind of, just
Security.
take a look at who
Yeah.
was on the bus. I guess they were trying to make sure certain people weren't fleeing the country, I guess.
Ah.
I don't know. I have no idea. But,
Right. But you're passing these checkpoints.
That was intimidating,
Was it? Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so every so often, there was probably...
It doesn't happen at Niagara Falls on the way to... but yeah, sometimes...
there were probably 3 or 4 checkpoints, but it kind of, raised the tension level for sure.
Sure.
And then you're right.
But you're passing the checkpoints.
We are, and we get to the border, and now you're there, sitting there for like
How
an
long?
hour, maybe.
An hour? Okay.
Well, like you said, the tour guide is out, negotiating in Arabic. No one understands what he's saying,
Right.
but he's doing his best to try and
Yeah. You just see hands
get.
going.
Yeah, exactly. So the bus ride back to Baghdad, where it was like, okay, we're going back.
So the tour guide just gets on the bus, probably looks a little frustrated maybe by now.
Yeah,
He's
he
like,
says,
okay, guys.
They said we can't leave today, but we can try again.
Okay.
Right. So and I
That's
think,
the message.
I don't know if that was the reality, but he was very optimistic.
That was the
always.
message.
Yeah. So he's like, well, we'll make another attempt. And I think we did. If I'm not mistaken, I think we did make a
Okay.
second attempt.
So you turn around and you're going back.
Yeah. No
Something sinks in.
pin
now.
drop silence.
Really?
For like probably, I don't know how long, but yeah. All of a sudden, everyone, all of a sudden the seriousness of the situation
Starts kicking in.
Yeah,
With
starts
you
kicking
too?
in. I think so.
Oh, you're sitting with your mom or your friends at that time?
No, so my mom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what do you guys, you're not saying much.
No.
But it's your mom. So
It
what do you,
is-
what, if anything, what's that communication
I don't
looking
know.
like?
It's a good question. At that stage, I think it's just the initial like acceptance of, okay, this is maybe a little more serious
Huh.
than the airport shut down. We have to use an alternative route to get out of the country.
Right.
Right. So now you start thinking, how long is this going to last? And are we here for a few more days?
Right.
And we were supposed to be there for 4 or 5 more days, anyways.
Right.
So it wasn't like it was, an extension of the time we were there.
Right.
But all of a sudden, I think it was the first time in my life where you realized you don't always have control over what's happening. Like there's things in life that happen that are totally beyond your control.
Yeah. Usually, even if you were to watch a movie about this kind of stuff, usually as it's developing, it doesn't quite yet sink in.
Right.
And sometimes I watch the actors and the characters in the experience, and I go, and I wish for them that they had discovered it sooner,
Yes.
so that they could have like really accelerated
Yeah.
whatever their efforts were.
And
But
as
somebody in your group did.
Yeah, I think
Try,
the tour
right?
guide,
So
he was clued into what was
Yeah,
happening.
he was clued
right?
in.
He's completely fluent in Arabic.
Right.
And so I think he had a pretty good idea of, okay, what's happening here.
Okay. So you guys get back to the same place where you were?
Yeah. So get back to the same place. Now, again, for the tour guide, he's like, we got a few more nights here.
Okay.
And then we got to figure out where we're going from here. Because if we can't leave in a couple more days, I need to make arrangements to accommodate these people somewhere. Right. So he's got all these logistics he's trying to figure out.
Yeah.
And so he's constantly on the phone, right, trying to work things out.
Sure. What were you guys doing when you got back? Because you said it was a change in your plans. You're there on there are certain events that you go out for. There's certain rituals that you do. You're going to go to this place, that shrine, this special place, that special place, right? Now you get back. Are you going to any of these special places? Mm-mm. What are you doing? So
basically, all the tours got like canceled.
Right. So
and it's like, okay, you guys sit and pray in your hotel rooms.
You know, so that's it. You're confined now to the hotel room.
Yeah, and this.
I mean, to the hotel itself, the property.
Correct, and it didn't last very long.
Okay.
Because while he's trying to figure out, like, I think like a day.
That's a long time. I think, because don't you think? Because usually, how much time do you actually spend in the hotel when you go on these trips? You're out. You're doing stuff.
True.
But now you're not doing stuff. You're sitting here in the hotel.
Yeah.
You're supposed to. You're usually expected to be out
there. But
there.
things were unraveling pretty quickly.
Okay.
And so, because what happened was, see, most of the tour group that we were with, were British citizens, right?
Okay.
There was a few Americans,
right?
And there was only 4 Canadians,
right?
So it was my mom and I and one other couple,
right?
And what ended up happening was both the British and American citizens were being rounded up by the Iraqi government.
Okay. Yeah. What do you mean? Like how like the guys with the guns are coming in?
Yeah.
Into the hotel.
Correct. Okay. Into all the hotels.
So you're in the lobby area seeing this the whole time?
No.
You know, on our trips, I remember if we had to sit around for 1 extra hour, people would be like, when are we going? Well, I want to do this. You're being sat down for hours.
I think because of, at this point, like I said, things
you already know. Right.
There were soldiers everywhere now.
Okay.
Right? Like, no matter where you went, there were soldiers walking everywhere.
Huh.
I think there are a few military vehicles you'd see rolling through the streets.
Okay.
So you pretty quickly realized, okay, this is not a normal day here,
right?
And so I think your sense of, what's the word for it? There's a heightened sense.
Like what's normal now changed.
Yeah.
So now this is the new normal.
Yeah.
I hate that term, but the new normal, and you're sitting there, and so, but then you started noticing. You were saying that certain people were starting to get. You said rounded up.
Oh, they were. So what ended up happening was,
they're being gathered and like you stay here, or they're being taken away somewhere?
No, they were loading them into buses and taking them to like certain locations.
Okay.
And so, and initially it was just everyone. So if you were a foreign national, you were escorted onto a bus, and driven to this one really, really big hotel.
So before you were escorted, you noticed others are being escorted? Or were you part of that group that was being rounded up?
It happened like within a day or so.
Okay.
Maybe 2 days, but it was quick.
But you're all together with the same group of people?
Yeah, correct. So the whole group was taken to this hotel. I still remember the name of it, the Al Rashid Hotel.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Still remember it.
Yeah, of course, right?
Yeah. And now that's where I started to internally freak out.
But on your way there, you're interpreting this as part of the plan that the tour guide talked about. Or did you see this as like part of the logistical plan?
No.
Or you're like, the tour guide is now out.
Correct. Oh, he's with us.
Right.
But he's now
not in control.
Exactly.
Okay.
He is one of the participants.
So he's got the sense of like, you can see the tour guide's face is like not negotiating anymore. No. Pretty resigned.
Well, it is what it is.
Because the first person you go to ask what's going on is the tour guide.
Right.
And this the tour guide saying like, I don't know.
They're in charge and we're going to follow their instructions.
Right. Because people ask things like, where are we going? How long we're going to be there? And he's saying to you, I don't know.
No, the guy with the machine gun tells you what to do.
Right.
That's who you listen to.
Right.
Yeah.
So you got your bags packed and you're heading out.
Yeah.
And you know you're not coming back to this place.
Oh, yeah, no. Yeah. So that's what they said. They said, everyone grab your stuff. You've got, so many minutes. And this was not, again, the tour guide. This is the, the soldiers. You've got so many minutes to be here with this stuff. Otherwise, we're going to come up.
Okay, so at that point, does the word hostage start setting into you, or not yet? Are you thinking this at all, or are you thinking like, we're going to be taken here? Then, because your last expectation is we're going to leave here maybe in another couple of days. Maybe we'll make another attempt to the border, right?
Well, so what ends up happening is everyone's trying to contact their embassy.
Okay.
Right? Like, listen, you got to get me out of here. I don't know what's going on.
That's right. That's right. That's what happens.
You
right?
need to get me. And so there's, I think you're in the moment, and then at that time, you're not thinking about anything other than how do I deal with what's currently happening to me.
Okay.
And I think that probably allows you to not freak out, right? Although once we were in that hotel, and I don't know how many days we were there for, but we were probably there for maybe 3 or 4 days.
Okay.
Like all your meals is the only time you're allowed to leave the room, right?
So you get to this hotel, this armored escort, right? That you're really getting
everywhere,
and obviously nobody's looking really happy about what's going on. Doesn't look like there's a concierge kind of service to this, right? No. You're now like, because when you said that normal of seeing military vehicles and military people, that was another normal. But you feel now when you got here, it's escalated to another level,
right? And that's the perfect word. It was escalating, right? It's scaling up.
Okay,
right.
So you're being told, get into this hotel. How are you receiving your instructions as to where you go and what you do?
So I think some of the soldiers, I don't remember that. I'm going to guess probably a few of them spoke broken English.
Right.
And so it was enough.
So you're getting it from them directly.
Yeah.
Your tour guide now is
he's one of us.
He's one of you. Yeah. And he's been given his directions.
Correct.
And you're being put in you're being told okay, you're going to go to this room. How do you know you can't leave?
So there's a soldier in the elevator.
Okay.
Right? And there's 2 soldiers on every floor at the elevator.
Okay.
They're all armed.
Right.
And so, you're not about to,
I know you, though. You see, this is the thing. We were the curious type.
Yeah.
So you're told, go to your hotel room and close the door.
Well, I was
then there's you. You're going to look out the window.
We went out at 11 o'clock
You're going to open the door and peek your head out or something. You
Yeah,
didn't do any of that stuff?
No,
You didn't do that.
No.
So you must this is different.
Yeah, that's what I said. I think this is where I start to freak out a little bit.
Okay.
Right? And unfortunately, so, they separated.
It's just you or you and your mom?
No, so they separated all the women and men.
Okay.
And so now I don't know what happened with the kids. The kids must have stayed with the mothers, I guess.
So you're now adult.
I'm over 18.
Your mom's separated from you now.
Correct.
When you're being separated from your mom at that moment, what is she saying to you? What are you saying to her?
I think we were both okay because we were still with the tour group.
Okay.
Right? So I think we were like, because even when we got split up, they just partnered us up with other people that were, as part of the group. Yeah.
And there's a lot of segregating that goes on anyway.
Right.
So that's, again, from the past normal, somewhat acceptable.
Yeah.
We'll see you later.
Exactly. Correct.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, you're right. That's true.
Okay.
So that worked out fine, except the roommate I had. This guy he was losing it.
Yeah.
He was. I mean,
we have that in every tour group.
No, this guy was.
This lunch is terrible.
So no, super negative.
Yeah.
I'm talking. He's like, we're gonna die, and he just kept repeating this.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh really?
He's like, oh, this is it. It's all over. I got kids back home. I'm never gonna see them again.
Oh my gosh.
And he's bawling. And I'm 18. I'm like, dude, what is wrong?
Do you have windows in this room? It's a hotel room. You ever look outside, see what's going on?
I don't remember that.
Okay. How many people approximately are in the room?
No, just 2 of us.
Oh, it's you and this guy?
Me and him.
Oh,
yeah.
My God.
So after, I'm going to say 2 days of being with him, I can't take his negativity. And I literally had an anxiety attack. So I got to the point where I was just throwing up, couldn't keep water down. And so there was a doctor that was in the group. So they brought the doctor in. And I don't know if there was an Iraqi doctor as well. I think there was. So I think the hotel had a doctor. And the tour group doctor was there.
Oh, your own.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so they, they're like, okay, there's something obviously wrong with this kid. He's really sick. He's just puking everywhere.
Did you get to see your mom in any of this?
No.
Okay.
No. And so
now this is like a level also that, again, it's just as days and time goes by, that escalation, that anxiety escalates as well.
I think for me this was the peak.
Plus you got this guy. right?
This is where it got as bad as it was going to get. I didn't know that.
Right.
But
the
looking
worst
back,
it ever been.
that was bad. And so they're like, yeah, we need to separate him from this other guy. He can't be in the room with him. So thankfully,
They put you in the penthouse.
they put me. I don't know I don't remember who I was with after that. I remember that guy.
Okay.
I don't know what happened after, but
You were sharing now with another person.
yeah.
Okay.
So they got me into another room, and it didn't last long either because in that process, what they realized was we were Canadians,
Right.
and they were only interested in holding American and British citizens
Huh.
because they wanted to then transport these guys to oil rigs as human shields.
Okay.
Right. So this was part of the find all the nationals we can find, and we're going to use them as a shield to make sure they don't bomb,
Right.
strategic locations.
Right.
And they're like, oh, your guys are Canadian. Okay, we don't care about the Canadians.
Wow.
Yeah.
Got no bones with you.
No. So when so all we had to do is we had to get word out to the Canadian embassy,
Okay.
and then finally someone, a couple of days later, showed up from the Canadian embassy and got us out of there.
Got you out of the hotel.
Yeah. And there's no internet at this time. It's 1990.
Right.
Almost no one has a cell phone. You definitely don't have a cell phone when you're traveling.
Right.
So we're literally using like telegrams to communicate with the embassy.
Not the app Telegram,
No.
but the actual. Or I wonder how many people know what an actual telegram.
Probably not.
How
a
it
lot.
works.
We're dating ourselves here.
But who's actually ever sent a telegram,
Yeah.
right? But so you're sending a telegram. You're sending a telegram, or
No,
something's being sent on your behalf. Or?
So it was. We had to make multiple requests. We kept making requests to the soldiers,
Okay.
and of course, you don't know if they've actually followed through with it.
Right.
But you're speaking this broken Arabic,
Uh-huh.
trying to explain that you're Canadian, you're not supposed to be here. There's only Americans and British. And at some point, someone got the message because the Canadian embassy showed up. Well, someone from the embassy showed up. And
When do you see your mom again?
that's when I saw my mom again.
And so was it a couple of days or a week?
A couple of days.
All right.
A couple of days.
So now what's the first thing you guys are saying to each other at that point?
So, well, we just, making sure that, we're okay. We kind of exchange some stories.
Yeah.
Because, so what was happening was they would let us out of the room, I believe it was 3 times a day.
Okay.
And you got it for your meals. So breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And it was floor by floor. So when your floor's turn came to eat, they would, round you up, take you, into the elevator, escort you down, bring you into this huge, like a banquet hall that they had.
Yeah.
And they'd set up the banquet hall as this massive buffet.
Uh-huh.
So we were being fed, and I guess we were safe. But
Yeah.
it was, you had complete loss of freedom, right? You didn't even get to choose when you were going to eat. You ate
Right.
when they said you could eat.
Right.
And,
And it's also not knowing what's going to happen
no idea.
next.
Yeah.
That's the biggest anxiety, right?
So that was the
Like
toughest
time
part.
moves really slow at that point.
Oh, yeah. Correct.
When you're first looking at this as it's unfolding, in just your view, mind you had somebody kind of spewing all this negativity. What are you expecting to happen at that point? What were you expecting to
I'm
happen?
18. I got my whole life ahead of me. I'm
Right.
figuring, okay, whatever's happening, we'll get out. It'll be fine.
You were thinking you were going to get out.
Yeah, I think if you look at most people in their teens, their 20s, you're invincible, right? Like, it doesn't matter what's happening. It's an adventure. It's
you'll
exciting.
get through this.
Yeah.
Well, we got through some pretty crazy things anyway, so
We did.
you had experience, right? But you were still thinking to yourself, in spite of hearing this person say all of this stuff, that you're going to be okay. You're going to get through it.
Earlier on, I think after hearing him for like whatever it was, a day and a half, 2 days,
Right.
I think I couldn't keep up my, it's still going to be okay. Just, hang in there.
Did you ever think like, hey, going back to before, you were planning to go away for 2 weeks.
Right.
Was there a time that you started thinking to yourself, I may never see these people again?
Yeah.
Yeah?
It was during that time, for
It's
sure.
real, right?
Yeah.
It happens.
Yeah.
So when you're there and you're thinking that you'll never see people again, like obviously there's a reaction that you had. Obviously, like you're not feeling well anymore. That's one very obvious reaction.
Yeah.
Would you say you felt sad, or what other kind of like emotions are you feeling at that time? You're generally, calm. You see the positive side of things.
If you know me, I'm pretty easygoing.
Yeah, you're very easygoing. At what point, like, did you have? Does an easygoing person, I guess, I'm wondering, look at it and go, like, what does an easygoing person feel when they're like,
See,
I may never see people again, or is
so,
it that simple?
It's so interesting that we're having this conversation now, because today I can look back,
Yeah.
and I can see signs, which at the time I didn't recognize.
Yeah, but what were you thinking?
So I remember, I wasn't thinking that much.
Right.
I think
Or feeling,
at the end of the day, like, I figured, okay, we just have to get a hold of someone from the Canadian Embassy.
Okay.
And they'll straighten it out. They'll get us out of here.
Right.
We'll be okay.
Okay.
It'll get sorted out.
Okay.
Right. So that was my focus.
So there was never a moment, it was a focus, but there was never a moment where there's no light at the end of this tunnel.
No, like I said, when I had that anxiety attack, I think, that was, I think I'd flipped the switch, and I was probably really scared, freaking out, losing hope.
Yeah.
That, it's going to work out.
So from the time from losing hope, obviously it passes, right? You felt
got
better. When did the light go back on again?
I got away from that guy.
Okay.
So
that had a lot to do.
Oh, huge, yeah.
Yeah.
And that was, for me, looking back in life, that was probably one of the biggest lessons I could have learned at that age.
Right.
That you don't want to
Who do you want to hang out with? Right?
Because it had a literal effect on my health, right? And I couldn't control it. I couldn't just, like, while he's there, turn it off and be healthy. It was manifesting itself in me.
Amazing,
So,
eh?
yeah.
I mean, that could happen anytime, being around negative people.
Right.
Constantly, right? And then at some point in time, you can't block it out anymore.
Right, correct.
And you can't choose to be away.
Right.
And so that the body finally, it actually starts changing our own thought.
So, and I'll share something else that I've never thought about this till just now. But one of the things I got in the habit of doing when we used to go down for meals is I would, like, I'm going to say steal. I would scoop a whole bunch of little sugar packets.
Okay.
And I would be, like, constantly eating sugar.
Oh.
Yeah. I didn't think of it. But, today...
Yeah.
If I get stressed, chocolate's my healthy way of dealing with it.
Sure.
But I know that's a sign. If I start, craving chocolate, I know internally I'm stressing.
Ah.
And it's interesting how, now that I think about it, I guess I was very stressed because I was going through packets of sugar.
That's interesting. So, but back then when you were grabbing the sugar, you weren't saying it, I'm having sugar because I'm stressed.
It was a craving.
It's all of a sudden you have this
I know why I have those
intensified craving for sugar.
Yeah.
That doesn't apply to everybody who craves sweet stuff, because I love sweet stuff. Maybe
it does.
It's our way of coping. Something about ice cream, right? So you're I'm really interested in understanding that exact part. Sorry, I'm taking more time on it, but there is a time you said you're losing hope.
Yeah.
We become very, very unwell. Mm-hmm. Like our body is responding physically, mentally, we're exhausted. Right. What I'm wondering about is, so let's just call it a low, a super low.
Yeah.
When did you start noticing it getting better than that? Like, you're not unwell anymore. You're better, and obviously this person's been removed from the equation.
Yeah.
That had something to do with it.
Yeah.
But the thought also still has to convert, right? So, like this is a real thought you're having, that the hope doesn't. You don't just sort of look at yourself and say, "Well, I'm feeling a little hopeless because of this guy."
Right.
You're feeling hopeless.
Correct.
It's now a real feeling. So where do you go from hopelessness, like the kind that makes you puke, right? In that moment, because the situation hasn't really gotten any better.
No, but I think once we got out, so they switched my room. It wasn't too long after. I think actually that helped. The fact that I had, two doctors.
Okay.
That were tending to me.
Right.
And they were speaking to each other. So the doctor that was with the tour group spoke enough Arabic.
Right.
That he could speak to the doctor. And I remember them having some conversation, and he kept saying Canadian.
Okay.
So I don't know if that's where the word got out. And it was like, okay, these guys are not supposed to be here.
Right.
And so finally, someone showed up from the Canadian Embassy and yanked us from that place.
Okay.
So I think, that whole incident, there was this like moment in there where there's like, oh wait, something positive might come from this kind of thing.
Okay.
Right? And I don't think you consciously think of these things when you're in that moment. You're just.
Well, that's my question, is like, were you actually noticing that at the time? But now when you look back.
I remember him saying Canadian a couple times.
That's when it started feeling a little bit better.
So again, there's that little, maybe something will happen here, right? Finally, the word will get out. And then when we finally did get out of the hotel, what we found was that there's only like, I don't know, there's maybe about 40 or 50 Canadians in the country.
Okay.
And
how do you know that?
Because they were all there.
They were all there. Okay.
They were all these guys that were they were all from like
this is a
Edmonton,
terrible
Calgary.
Situation. Yeah.
And they were working the oil fields.
Oh, okay.
So they're all
contractors.
They're all contractors.
Okay. Not pilgrims like
no,
your.
No, we were the only pilgrims.
Okay.
So everybody else is like single. Well, not single, but you know, they're by themselves.
Right.
And
they're in a professional capacity.
Yeah.
Working, right?
Correct. And so what the Canadian Embassy had done was, because I guess these guys, as soon as things started, going south, they showed up at the embassy.
Okay.
And so the embassy had, I don't know, maybe like a dozen houses that housed all of the ambassadors, et cetera, right? All the people who worked at the embassy. So they had divided up all the people, and so we were all sleeping.
Oh, so you were at a Canadian embassy?
Yeah. Well, we weren't at the actual embassy, but we were at someone's house.
Somebody's house.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And so they had set up, cots and things, and you were so. When that happened, we ended up at this one house. I don't remember the exact title of so he was a diplomat, obviously.
Right.
And I don't remember what his title was, but we were at his house. He was single. He had a young housekeeper that basically, looked after the house. And so there was a lot of space in the house. And so all four of the Canadians who were the pilgrims, like my mom, myself, and the other couple, ended up there.
Okay. So you're reunited with your mother.
Yeah.
Okay. Then what happens?
And I think that was really helpful because there was a little bit of a support system.
Yes.
Now, the other couple were elderly. They were like I'm going to say they were probably in their 60s, maybe 70s.
Okay.
To 18, anything over 50 is elderly, right? But
and you're interacting with the other contractors, obviously, that are there, the other people that are guests in this place. Were you?
So was
there talk?
The way it worked, what we understood about here's the rules of engagement.
Okay.
Is that we're allowed to walk through Iraq. We're okay to be in the country.
Okay.
We cannot leave, but we're not held like as the British and American citizens were, captive in a certain location.
Okay.
We have to carry our papers with us because when you're walking through the streets now, they've got these little booths everywhere, like at pretty much every intersection, even small side streets.
And you didn't notice this earlier?
No, because we never were in the residential area.
Okay.
Right. So I think the booths were always there.
Okay.
I don't know if they were manned or what.
Okay.
But there's booths everywhere, and every time you're passing one of these, you got to pull out your papers.
Okay.
And show them who you are. And,
okay.
So I used to every so often walk from the house to the embassy. It wasn't a long walk. It was like 10 minutes. But we were free to roam.
Okay.
The Canadian government said, well, look, we'll house you. You're on your own for food, clothing, whatever. Okay. We can wire money over.
Okay.
And so we can get you, cash from your bank account.
Okay.
So if you have money back home, you can get access to that.
So normal starts coming back to like the normal that you have.
A little bit.
Yeah.
So you're stuck there and you're starting to, so what we were used to do was us along with a few of the other guys who were from the rigs, at nighttime, we'd gather at the embassy and you would listen to the BBC because one of the guys had hooked up shortwave radio.
Okay.
So you could listen to the BBC, and that was like fascinating because on the BBC's front, you're getting, Western propaganda.
Right.
On the Iraqi news at night, you're getting the Iraqi propaganda. Nobody's telling the truth, by the way, because we're there. We're looking around. We're like, neither group is
telling you what's going on,
telling us what's actually happening.
So what was actually happening?
At the time, nothing.
Okay.
Nothing at the time.
Well, where you were.
Yeah, no, there was nothing going on.
Okay.
I think strategically, everyone was making their moves, right? The West, NATO.
Right.
Where they were gathering ships into the area. Actually, there already were ships on their way.
Right.
But there were definitely, movements of war that were taking place. And, the Iraqi government knows that. And so they're starting to strategize how they're going to protect their, points of interest.
Right.
So the chess pieces are moving.
Right.
But the citizens that live in Iraq, they're just going on with their daily lives.
And back then, one group doesn't really have access to all of this media channels that you can check from here, check from there, talk to people.
We had BBC on shortwave, and we had 1 hour a night of the Iraqi news.
So when you're staying there, what's now going on, and what's your expectation now? Like, when are you going to get out of here?
So because we're connected to the embassy, there's definitely a lot more hope.
Okay.
Because now, you're sort of in tune with what's happening back home. They have the newspaper flown in. I don't know how it gets there every day, but
yeah.
So you now have access to like news and what's going back, back on in Toronto and stuff. And so you start realizing, okay, they're making attempts to free the hostages.
Okay.
Right now, Iraq called us the guests of Saddam. So we were guests of Saddam, as far as the Iraqis were concerned. But yeah, we were hostages. And that's when you realize, this is serious. And I don't know how long this is going to draw out.
And when you're in this situation, you got choices to make, like emotional choices, how you're feeling about like your liberties being taken away. Like, we live in a country where you're free to walk around. You don't have to carry papers.
Right.
What is your thought at that time when you're walking around? Is there, what would you say? Like, are you accepting? Are you frustrated? Are you feeling impatient? What were you,
I think
18-year-old?
Now, I don't know if this is just me, but I mean, I think for most people, when you're in an actual crisis moment,
right,
the only things you focus on are the things that are literally important. I think
that's just you.
Me? Yeah? No,
Well, that's why I'm talking to you, because that's not actually what happens in a lot of crisis moments. A lot of times in crisis moments, there's a sense of panic that sets in. That's quite natural. That sets in. Did you feel panicked?
There's definitely moments of it, for sure.
Yeah.
I don't think.
But you weren't walking around constantly panicked.
No, you can't.
Well, why not? Why can't you constantly be in a state of panic, Huss?
I don't know. I'm just not wired that way. It's totally ineffective. What's the point of that? No, I don't know. Whatever it is in me, but I don't think I'm the only one, because when I remember, so when we used to come down for the meals at that hotel.
Yes.
And you would sort of like, you didn't talk very much either, because you weren't sure like what you could say, what you couldn't say. Right. It was, so you just did a lot of head nods, and but I think there was this sense of like, we're going to be okay. And it's funny that I haven't mentioned this yet, but I think a lot of my calm probably came from my religious beliefs.
Huh.
So the reality is, we were pilgrims. And I think one of the beliefs that I've been raised with is that as a pilgrim, if when things go down, there's two ways it can go, right? I mean, heaven forbid you end up dying there.
Right. People did.
Yeah, people do. Then that is sort of like this free pass to heaven.
Oh,
right? Because
okay.
you were there seeking enlightenment.
Right.
You were there seeking
right.
closeness to God.
Right.
And so based on those intentions, it's sort of like you've passed the test kind of thing.
Right.
Right. But in most cases, you're going to be looked after. Like, things are going to work out okay. You don't know how it's going to work out, but somehow. And I think that was this constant thing in the back of my head.
Yeah, because I think that's always a question that comes back, is like, you say it's going to work out, and then the next question is, how do you know? And your answer is, you don't know.
No. Well, yeah, for me, like I said, the fact that we were on the pilgrimage is where I borrowed a lot of that. It was just faith.
Right.
That we're going to be okay. I don't know how, but it'll be all right.
And the next steps, like, there's a sense of it's not finite. You don't know how many steps you're going to have to take to get to safe home again, right?
Yeah.
Had you started making estimates? Like, you're now past your 2-week timeline.
Yeah.
You were there a total of how long?
So 4 months altogether.
Right.
Yeah.
So from 2 weeks to 4 months, like, so now you're in like, month 1, right? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm wondering, like, when you're in month 1, you're not able to see month 4.
No.
Right?
I can share a couple of stories on that. But again, I think it was this prolonged, like, it's going to get better. And there were signs. Like, so the Canadian diplomats, right? The groups that came and actually we had a group that came and visited with Saddam, just to try and get a release of some people. And initially what the Iraqi government agreed to is they would release all the women and children.
Okay.
So they said, okay, fine, we're only going to keep the men.
When was this?
I want to say this was this was shortly after we got released from the hotel. So maybe it was a week later.
Okay.
So it's maybe 3 weeks since we've been in Iraq.
Okay.
So my mom got to leave.
So your mom gets, I'll come back to that then. All right, later.
So my mom gets to leave. And she didn't want to leave. She's like, no, I'm staying. Okay. And I'm like, no, listen, they're letting you go now.
Right.
What if they flip it at some point and you can't leave, but I can? Like, get out while you can. And I think all the other women that were part of I'm trying to think now. I guess it was just, there was a couple of the women that were there. Because it wasn't just all men workers, right? So the women collectively talked to my mom and said, you got to go. And so she left.
She was reluctant. Yeah.
And she left, and I'm glad she did.
Yeah.
And then it was me. And it's like, okay, now, we wait to see when we get to go. And I think from that point on, she was out of harm's way. I figured, I'm going to be all right. Like, she got out, I'll get out.
So it's progress.
Fine. Yeah. And I think from that point on, it became a bit of an adventure for me. I'm 18. So I'm 18 in like a couple of months, right?
Right.
Which is why I didn't get to leave with the kids.
Yeah.
Ironically. But I did some SEERs growing up. And so being on my own, it was pretty neat. It was...
What was so neat about it?
So I became good friends with a housekeeper.
Okay.
He was similar in age to me. He was a couple of years older.
Okay.
And he was from Thailand.
Right.
And so his family... So the way it worked was he worked, in the Canadian Embassy, made a bunch of money, and sent money back home.
Right.
And so because we were the similar age, similar just likes and things, he spoke some broken English. And so we became good friends. And so when he did his chores, I'm like, dude, I'm just here. I'll help out. So I started working in the garden with him. He'd go grocery shopping. I'd go grocery shopping. So it gave me a chance to see how to negotiate, like how to barter and stuff. And so all of a sudden, I've got this buddy.
Yeah.
And we're hanging out. And I'm starting to learn a little bit about the culture. And the interesting thing there was, what I realized was as soon as any of the Iraqi citizens, like for example, if you got in a cab, if they found out you were one of the people who was hostage, right, quote unquote guest of Saddam,
right,
they were like so generous. They're like the most hospitable people I've ever met, and they would refuse to charge you for the taxi ride.
What?
Yeah. So we actually stopped telling people because you'd feel bad. It's like you're trying to make a living, right?
Right.
And it's like the taxi ride was like 30 cents, 50 cents, like.
Right.
I don't mind paying. Yeah.
Right.
But they were like, they wouldn't charge us for meals if we went out for like a restaurant or something like that. And so.
Well, you really guessed then.
Yeah.
According to them. Right.
Yeah. And so.
That's an interesting psychology, eh?
What's that?
Well, to think how they're good people. They're trying to take care of you.
They felt badly for us. They literally were like, you want to go back home. We understand you can't leave the country. And so they were doing their best to try and, just be this host, right? Literally, like a host in your own home kind of thing.
Right.
Or having a guest in your home.
So this was like now month 1, month 2. Did you at time, as time's passing, you're making the best of the situation. Maybe, could you even say enjoying it a little bit? Or no?
I think I'd say I'm making the best of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're still not yet. We're not having fun here, obviously.
No, because I'm slow, and so now I'm looking at. I got to get back before the end of August, because I got to be there for school. It's my last year of higye school. I got to graduate, right?
But you still have something. You got a plan. Like you still think that's coming now.
Yeah,
you're back to that
for sure.
Okay.
It's so we're gonna be here for a few extra days, a week, 2 weeks,
right?
But it's gonna end. Got to get back.
Okay.
And the one of the other blessings that took place was during that time frame. The elder couple that we were with in the home. Mm-hmm. So the wife said, "I'm not leaving."
Okay, so there was somebody who decided.
So she's like, and her husband completely relied on her.
Yeah,
like
right.
She cooked. She looked after him.
She looked after him.
Right. I can't see him having been able to cope if she wasn't there.
Right.
And so she's like, "No, I'm not leaving him, and we'll get through this together," kind of thing. And so because they were there, I sort of had it was almost like, I don't know, how that grandparent relationship a kid has?
Yeah.
So they became these surrogate grandparents, and I was respectful to them and tried to help them out.
Right.
Because there was things they couldn't do. And so they were sort of, leaning on me and asking me for help and stuff. And every now and then they would say, you know what, we're here. Why don't we continue our pilgrimage? Why don't we jump in a taxi and go and visit one of the religious sites or a shrine, or, actually sort of, offer some prayers and take advantage of the fact that we're here.
Right.
And I don't know how many visits we made, but we made a bunch of visits over the next couple of, I'm going to say weeks.
Okay.
Right. And so that turned out to be a really good experience, because now, initially I went because my mom wanted me to go.
Right.
I'm like, fine, we'll do this thing that mom wants to do.
Right.
But now it's a whole different experience. And now I'm sort of chaperoning or going with this elderly couple, and it's just the three of us. And we're negotiating with taxi cabs and stuff. And it's a good hour and a half. So you're learning a lot of Arabic. you're getting an idea of what it feels like to be in this country. But that sense.
So now you get to this point, you're making lemonade out of lemons, right?
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah,
it's pretty good lemonade.
Yeah.
And now you find out. So when you find out that you're going back, how's the news break to you? What's the reaction?
So
then?
remember I was saying that there's delegates that have been coming?
Right.
Okay, so one of the delegate teams actually manages to get a hand, it's just like a lottery. There's a handful of, as a goodwill gesture, citizens of foreign countries that they're going to release.
Okay.
And so there's a few European countries and Canada that got like a half dozen citizens released. And I was actually chosen as one of those 6.
Okay.
Right. Now, the funny thing is, because you're asking how did this all, I kept like a little daily diary.
Okay.
I don't know if it was just me trying to cope
with
what was going on.
Right.
But I would, sort of write down what was happening that day and what took place and what I did.
Did you ever have a diary before then?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. In fact, I remember going to one of the bazaars and they had like school supplies at one of these, stalls. And that's where I got the book and the pencil from.
Oh.
So I had, every couple of days I would write numbers, right? Like, so it's day 1, day 2, day 3. And I'm keeping a log of how many days we've been there. And at some point, I don't know why, I went ahead and I just wrote like numbers, until I got to, I don't remember what the day was at this point. My wife still has the diary somewhere. But the day I stopped on, ironically ended up being the day.
No.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
You ran out of paper, or you just decided to stop?
I went that far.
Crazy.
And that's the day that, I ended up leaving on.
Okay. I'm not going to try to analyze that right now. That's going to be on another one.
I can't explain that.
But that is crazy.
It is. Yeah.
So
there was a lot of moving parts that took place for us to leave on that day.
Right? Like, what are the chances?
Because they gave us approval a few days in advance, and then we had to get, tickets to fly out, but that was the day we left. So.
Entry number 106.
Yeah, whatever it was,
whatever
right.
it's called.
Correct.
So when you get this news and you're preparing, what are your thoughts at that time? Like,
so strangely enough, I think I was at that point comfortable enough being there.
Okay.
Now I'm sort of focusing on all the positive things, right? There was still the worry at night. I think the night was the hardest. It was when you were going to bed. It was hard to fall asleep. All these thoughts are racing through your head about what's going to happen, etc. But I think I had found a way to cope with the situation.
What are the thoughts that are going to happen?
I don't know.
Is it the same?
It's the same repetitive. Yeah, like am I going to get back in time for school? What have I missed over I'm 18. What have I missed over the summer? What's been going on? Right. So I don't think the fear of am I ever getting out was
like your life.
Yeah, no, I don't. It was fleeting. I think if that ever came up, I probably found a distraction, honestly. Again, I'm saying that today, looking back.
Sure.
Because I watched a lot of movies. The embassy had like a massive library of VHS tapes.
Right. Yeah.
And I was going through them.
Just binge.
Yeah.
Right?
Correct. But so when we found out that I was able to leave, myself and along with a couple other of the workers decided that no, this elderly couple needs to get out. They're both on medication. I don't know how well they're coping with all the stress.
Right.
It's got to be taking a toll on them.
Sure.
And so we actually tried to see if there was a way to exchange and get them out.
Right.
And I'm like, I'll stay back.
Right.
Didn't work out that way.
Okay.
The Iraqi government was like, nope, these are the names we've selected. They either leave or no one leaves, kind of thing. And that was it.
So when you look back on it now, I mean, obviously you come back, you're reunited with your loved ones, family, all of that, and they're just like tears of joy, right, that you're back. What stood out to you when you got back?
So the one other thing I should have mentioned so I'm going to go backwards for a second before we get there is, so we had figured out that you could call at certain times.
Yes.
And you could make a phone call and it would get out, and you could actually connect, right? And so the way it worked is that you had to just sit there and dial, because most of the calls you would get this busy signal, it wouldn't actually connect.
Right.
But every so often it would ring, and the ring would then, I guess, go through to an international operator, and you would tell that international operator, look, I'm trying to get a hold of this household, this number, and then they would connect you. And so we had actually a couple of conversations.
Okay.
But we also learned very quickly that in those conversations, if you mention anything about what was going on, the call would get cut.
Sure.
Right? So it was totally bugged.
Of course.
So everything you were saying was,
I can't. You just imagine the first phone call. Hey, how's it going? Yeah, this is what's happening here. Cut. It's like, okay, they're gonna not say that, right? Just extend the conversation.
But at least we had that as a way to let people back home, because otherwise no one knew how we were doing. Or
Right.
We were still alive.
That's the first question everyone asks you: is, "Are you okay? What's going on?"
Yeah. Are you alive?
Click.
Like, what's happening? Yeah.
And you can't. Right.
So you could talk about how you were doing.
Yeah.
And just benign stuff like the weather.
Yeah.
But don't get into anything that is even close to, what's really happening.
So you wouldn't even get like there's nothing else said to you. You just, the line gets
No,
cut.
I think what was happening was you would kind of get filled in on what was happening back home. Just like, so-and-so had their birthday party, and it was like really just small talk.
All right.
But at least it was that connection.
Okay.
Right. So when we did get back home, being reunited, that was pretty strong.
When you got back, did you think back on like, I've been away for 4 months, man, and I don't know, from the time that that Kuwait, that military
Was
action
invaded.
taken,
Yeah.
and then there was another military action that then Iraq was then by NATO forces. Then there was that military action that took place.
Right.
You weren't there at that time.
No.
So it was 4 months.
All of the Canadians at that point had been released.
Right.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on that after like you come back, looking at that whole experience?
So I actually went into a bit of a depression.
Yeah.
When the war, when NATO forces finally started attacking.
Right.
Just because we had formed so many friendships with like storekeepers, taxi drivers,
Ooh.
and you realize, these are innocent people. Like they have nothing to do with the political situation or what's happening there, right? They got families.
Yeah.
And they're just trying to raise their kids and live a good life, and you're like, oh man, like you don't know what's going to happen to them. So that was tough.
I knew you at this time. Obviously, we're hanging out.
Yeah.
I never got a sense of that.
Yeah.
That you were feeling this.
Okay.
I mean, did you say to anybody or no?
No,
You just
I don't
kind
think
of
so.
keep it to yourself.
Yeah.
But it was real.
It was.
And how did you like navigate through that?
I don't know.
You don't want to think about this right now.
That's a good question. I don't know. I know it affected me for a while. Like I was down for a bit.
Yeah, because why I'm curious is because I find that you pointed to something else before as what you leverage to get you through things.
Right.
And you said it was your faith, your belief in something, whatever it is, but you leveraged it, and there are like for everybody it's different, but for you it seems like it's a very it's got a lot of utility to have this faith.
Absolutely.
To have belief, like even if it's just to have it for that purpose, that you can lean on it,
right,
and go, look man, like this is what I don't control or whatever it is, and you have faith that okay, whatever happens that they're going to be also okay somehow in the end of it. But it's not a good situation for people.
No, No, I think if I didn't have that going in,
Yeah.
I think it would have been a really different experience.
Right?
Right? 100%.
So now years go by. Like, what's the biggest sort of lesson? Or
I would say just a couple of years out from that.
Yeah.
I'm looking back on that as like it was pivotal. It was like such a big moment that actually turned out to be a really positive thing for me.
So like you changed a lot. Yeah.
Well, so so at the time I had a girlfriend, right? And as soon as we got back, like within a couple of months, we were engaged. I was like, okay, we're getting married. And I had this sense of urgency. It was funny because most people at my age, you know, you're 18.
Yeah.
It's all about what's happening on the weekend and let's just hang out and have some fun. And meanwhile, I was like, you don't know how much time you've got. Like, you don't know if you have control over what's going to happen a year from now, 2 years from now.
That was what was driving you.
Yeah. And I had this massive sense of urgency to just, okay, I need to live. I need to do everything, check off all the boxes, do what I want to do with my life because I don't know how much time I've got.
Does that ever wear off?
Yeah, I think after a while it does. I think it served its purpose though, because I mean it got me moving.
Yeah.
And honestly, looking back, it was a really positive experience for me to go through. I grew up a lot. I learned a lot of, looking back, like no matter what happened after that experience, for the most part, nothing came close to being that severe.
Yeah. So like nothing shakes you anymore the same way. Yeah. Things can happen in life, right? I mean, obviously, right?
Right.
But you've been through that.
Yeah, correct.
It's funny. Earlier on, I tried to see if you would use the word joy or fun to describe what you were going through, and you wouldn't call it fun or enjoyable. I mean, there were moments, right? Like, but then when you look back on it, you call it positive.
But it was so after my mom had left and it was just me and I was hanging out with the housekeeper, and I mean at that point it was a real adventure. Like that was exciting.
Yeah.
Right. And at 18 it was kind of cool.
Well, they often say that, like, turn it into an adventure. Now, you just did that.
I think it just happened.
You just did it.
Yeah.
Well, there's that other guy from your first room that but that's my point, right? Like I think that's what I notice about you, which is why I really appreciate this. Like I know it's not easy kind of getting yourself back to some of these other points.
I've actually never thought about some of the stuff since then, but go ahead.
Yeah, right. But it's not only are you the way that you are, that you navigate like this through these kind of events or experiences, but you're also in the presence of others that are not navigating the same way, maybe navigating 180 degrees the opposite way. So it's not like you're not seeing how else it could be done, right?
But that's what I mean. Like that experience, Mohammed, it gave me these reference points,
right?
Because
don't be that guy.
Yeah, right.
Seriously.
So when you hear people talking about if you're into any sort of self-help, that you got to be positive. Your attitude, you control your attitude.
Sure,
right. I always look back at that experience.
And speaking of having a positive attitude, like you had a positive attitude, I would say all my life I've known you.
Oh, thank you.
100%.
Appreciate that.
It's one of the things I admire about you the most. But even a person who has a positive attitude, some days it's pretty cloudy out there.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
And when it gets to that point, even a positive person gets fatigued. Even a positive person can have a negative thought. And there's this sometimes, or like can have a moment of doubt, can have a moment of fear. It doesn't mean you're not positive anymore.
No, I think when you're positive, quite honestly, it's not that you don't feel those emotions. You just don't dwell on them. I think they're always there. I think it's human to worry, to have fears, to self-doubt. I think that's what makes us who we are. But it's do you dwell on that? Is that what you focus on, spend all your time on? Or do you choose your response differently? Right? And I think that experience helped me observe the fact that you actually have a choice here. That is,
yeah, we often talk about like the kids, the difference between reacting and responding, right? I mean, you read about the same stuff.
Correct.
Some people, though, and I think this example of a person who was freaking out, like in that first room, there are people who go through experiences nowhere close to what you went through. But for them, it's difficult, right? For everyone, it's a different context.
Yeah, I don't know if you can really like sort of measure them
Yeah,
up
you
against
can't.
one another. You can't. Because
Right?
if you're going through a crisis,
Yeah.
it's a crisis.
It's a crisis, 100%. And you help people with crisis, like financial crisis. You help them come up with financial plans, and that's what you do. But what do you say to people who have already like a mindset that's not like yours, that are struggling with their crisis? Because it's not like you can't tell them, hey, this is not an important thing.
Right.
It's a crisis. It's their crisis.
Absolutely, yeah.
What was somebody struggling with that? What would you say are like this to get them through it?
So I think really all you can do is help them become aware that they have a choice, that they can choose their response to it. And then it's up to them to, to decide how they're going to respond. Because I think for most situations, it's the awareness that's lacking. People don't realize you've got a choice sometimes. If you're aware of that, wait, hang on, pause. Before you just, so in between what happens is that stimulus and your reaction to it, right? There's a moment where hopefully you can pause to just take a deep breath, take a look at what's happening, and then decide, okay, well, how am I gonna deal with this?
Do you find yourself having to do that from time to time?
Oh yeah, yes.
So you actually say to yourself,
deep breath. Oh yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even if it's something as benign as you've got a relative that just kind of just drives you a little crazy.
or like you got a flat tire or whatever.
Yeah,
it could be anything.
Right.
Some people, for them, it's a real struggle, and
you just have to pause.
The pause.
You can't.
The pause helps.
Yeah. Do not immediately react to, especially when things are going bad.
How would you say? Sometimes when we pause, I find that also when we're thinking about a situation, by thinking on it more, it gets kind of like worse now because of what they're focusing on.
Well, yeah.
So then, like when somebody gets to this point of like, call it hopelessness.
Right.
You said you experienced it, like a loss of hope, complete loss of hope. What do you say to that to kind of work your way past that? You did it.
Oh man, I don't know. I think that there's a point at which you probably want to be talking to a therapist. I think there's a real use for professionals to step in. I mean, I didn't end up seeking anyone at that time. I think just partially because of the culture. But
you did get help. You got the doctor.
True.
Right.
True. No, I mean, like I didn't see
you didn't fight the help either.
No.
When the help came, you accept you were reacting obviously to that situation, and then.
Right.
You mentioned that when these doctors or some people came in to help, you accepted the help.
Yeah, but I'm just true. But I'm looking at your question of when someone gets to a point where they start feeling hopeless.
Right.
Like that's pretty severe.
That's difficult.
And I think you gotta surround yourself with people that are positive. You gotta be willing to sort of have a connection with some people. I think the worst thing you can do in that moment is to start shutting yourself off from people, because we need each other.
Yeah.
Right. I think there's a lot of healing that takes place if you're just able to. I think that's what when someone passes away, the community, hopefully the family, gathers around the people that are struggling with the loss.
Right.
Because we need that connection. That's how you get through those things.
Amazing, man. Thank you so much. It's like a joy to sit with you anyway, but to be able to sit here and go through this experience with you, we've never done this.
No.
And to hear how you've gone through there's a lot of moments probably still. You said you wanted to share a couple of stories. Did you get a chance? Like there were a couple of things you wanted to, you said a couple of stories in there, but, honestly, going somewhere, your plan was one thing.
Yeah.
A whole other thing unfolded. And it's amazing, even sometimes going in the direction with a good intent, how it unfolds might not even be the way you thought it would. Right. Turns out to be better. Would you have traded that experience away if you could?
It's funny.
Not go through
Someone else asked me that, maybe, I don't know, this was like a year or two.
You wouldn't wish it on someone else, right?
No.
But then if you had a choice to trade it and not go through it.
No, absolutely not. No, I would not that I would volunteer to re-experience that.
Right.
But I mean, it it was priceless. It really helped mold me in so many ways, and I couldn't imagine. I wouldn't be who I am today if I hadn't gone through that. So it was instrumental in in me getting to where I am right now.
Thanks again.
No, and you're thanking me. I'm humbled that you asked me to come talk about this. So thank you. I appreciate it.
No, I appreciate you sharing it. Those are not easy recollections to make. You talk about the opportunities that you had in there, but there are obviously some moments that are really, really difficult to go through and to relive them sometimes. I mean, the hard one to deal with is like, when you think about the people who didn't get out, and they're being. Would you ever say that there's a sense of, I don't know, is guilt the right word? I got out. I mean, you volunteered to stay to get others out.
Right.
Like you got out, and they.
I wasn't the only one. There was a few of us that were like, no, this older couple, they're not going to make it here.
Yeah.
And luckily, I mean, they were released shortly after we were.
I was afraid to ask you that question, like.
It wasn't far after, and maybe the Iraqi government knew that.
Yeah.
So I think they were strategically trying to win goodwill, like internationally. Right. And so they probably planned out how they were going to, play out their chess pieces.
Right. I always ask every guest of ours, like, what they go on.
Just to back up for a second.
Yeah.
But it wasn't so much the concern about the Canadians that were there. Like when the war broke out, we were all back home.
Yeah.
Because it took a while before NATO finally acted, and I guess they were doing their best to work through diplomacy or whatever. But it was the Iraqi citizens that and I think the university. I spoke to a few other people at that time who were also some of the guys from Calgary, because we had exchanged numbers and things.
Yeah,
and so I remember we were all devastated. We kind of shared that sadness at that time that. We'd made friends with some of the people that were living there.
Yeah, they're real people.
And they have nothing to do with the conflict that's taking place. That they're not political.
Yeah.
And yet they're the ones that are going to pay the biggest price, quite frankly. So.
Do you ever go back?
No. Huh. So I wouldn't mind to go back. My wife, terrified.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, so if we had her here, you'd get a whole different side of the story.
Remember, I even said we'll even get her here one day.
Yeah.
It's...
No, because unfortunately for her, she just got these snippets, right? Like these brief phone calls where we would talk for, 3-4 minutes.
Yeah.
Or a telegram that I could get out. She had no idea what was going on. So she was...
Yeah, the rest is left up to like what you see in the news and your imagination.
Yeah. Yeah, I would not want to trade spots with her.
Right.
No.
Yeah, that's why you told your mom to go.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? It makes sense. Yeah. Huss, I always ask people for their input, their feedback on what we're doing here. How was your experience, if you can speak to that, and what you think about what we're trying to do here with our little idea.
This is phenomenal. I think, because here's the thing. And we talked earlier before we got on air, I don't know if it was recorded or not, but it's all about stories. Like, from the dawn of civilization, right? Yeah. We gather around campfires and tell stories. And I think it's probably one of the most effective means of communication. Yeah. We remember stories. We don't remember lectures. We don't remember dissertations, but we remember, snippets of stories of other people's experiences. If we can even get a couple of little bits of insight into our own lives and how we can maybe make some different decisions or have some hope.
Yeah.
Then I think that is such an important thing to be able to do for other people.
Right.
So I think this is like huge.
Oh, thank you, man.
No, for sure.